Alright, so here we have part 4 audio lecture for chapter 21, looking at the second half of the PowerPoint notes. And on some of these slides there isn't a lot of notes underneath the PowerPoint slide because a lot of it is just really basic definition. So you can have alterations of leukocyte function, and this could be due to a quantitative disorder as well as qualitative disorders. And remember what your leukocytes are. Those are your white blood cells. All right. Quantitative disorders, it's quantity. So there's going to be an increase or a decrease in the cell number. This could be due to a bone marrow disorder. It could be due to premature destruction of the cells. All right. If it's premature destruction, then you're going to have a decrease. If there's a bone marrow disorder, you can have either an increase or a decrease. If you have an increase in those cells, all right, regardless of what type of cell, whether it's B cells, T cells, eosinophils, leukocytes, sorry, not leukocytes, neutrophils is what I was looking for. It could be a response to some sort of infectious microorganism, all right, whether that be a particular virus, it could be a bacteria, it could be an infectious or a parasitic worm. And if it's going to be like leukopenia, it's going to be a reduction in circulating numbers of leukocytes. Eosinophilia would be a love of the cells, and it's eosinophil, so it's going to be an increase in the eosinophils or cytosis. Both of those would indicate an increase in the circulating numbers. All right, so know these two words, the penia and the philia or cytosis. Then there could be a qualitative disorder. If it's qualitative, then it's an issue in the quality or the function of those cells. I'm sure many of you have had mono, also called infectious mononucleosis. Generally, this is an acute self-limiting infection. Acute means it comes on relatively quickly. Self-limiting because it goes away on its own. It's an infection of the B cells that have been infected by Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV, is generally the virus that causes this issue. About 85% of mono cases are caused by EBV. How a person contracts this virus is through personal contact with another person who has it. And in most cases, it's going to be saliva. All right, saliva from sharing a fork with someone, sharing a drink, using the same straw. And the reason why the B cells get infected with EBV is because the B cells have the Epstein virus receptor. All right, so this is a specific tissue tropism. You remember that from micro. I know I mentioned that last semester. But you have that specific receptor that the virus is going to use to get inside of those cells. That specific receptor is not on liver cells. It's not on muscle cells. It's only B cells. Just like HIV infects T cells or macrophages that have the CD4 positive marker on it. So symptoms, you can have just a general flu-like initial infection or those type of symptoms that can include not feeling well, mild headache, maybe even mild joint pain, fatigue, maybe a mild fever. But over time, those will actually go away, and then what develops is going to be a true fever, the sore throat, swollen cervical lymph nodes, and fatigue. All right, lots of fatigue. So fever, fatigue, sore throat, swollen lymph nodes, those are going to be the major signs and symptoms of what you would present when you went to the physician, the doctor, the PA, whoever, because you thought you were sick. All right, in that initial flu-like symptoms, you may think you just have the flu, and so you stay home. And then you kind of feel better Maybe a little bit, you don't have the joint pain, you don't have the headache, but you have this severe sore throat, the swollen lymph nodes, because the B cells are actually proliferating in your lymph nodes, the cervical lymph nodes, and that's what's causing the increase in size. That can actually then cause some pain. And you have the increased lymphocyte count because those B cells are being activated and causing the B cells to proliferate. All right, so mono typically lasts anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks if it's a relatively mild case. Some people can go on with their normal activities, daily activities. They may be a little more fatigued. They may sleep 12 hours a day instead of 8, but can still function relatively well. Some people have a very severe case and can actually be out of school for a couple of months even. And they can drop some serious weight. They can actually be quite ill, generally not life-threatening, but lack of complete activity. All right, serious complications, they're not very many. They are infrequent, under 5%, and this is actually probably on the high side. Probably under 1% is where you would see serious complications. And the most serious complication would be a splenic rupture. All right, and that is the most common cause of death in mono, even though death due to mono is extremely rare. But if there is death, it's probably going to be because of splenic rupture. Why do you have splenic rupture? All right, up here, increased lymphocyte count. The B cells are being activated to proliferate because of the virus being present there. And so you just have huge numbers of B cells. Those go to the spleen, they get trapped in the spleen, and the spleen becomes enlarged. So you have splenomegaly. And if it's just enlarged, that's all right. But if it gets too big, then you can actually have rupture. And if that's the case, the physician will actually monitor that. All right, then leukemias. Look into a particular type of cancer, malignant disorder of the blood and blood-forming organs and cells. So this can affect any type of blood cell. And what you have is an excessive accumulation of these leukemic cells. The leukemic cells are not functional. Excessive number of the leukemic cells overcrowd the bone marrow and stop the production of normal cells. You have a figure in your textbook. Let me look at which one that is real fast, using up time. Figure 21.8 looks at the different types of leukemias and how they originate. All right, but what you need to know is that leukemia is blood-forming organs and cells. And it's an excessive accumulation of those cells that cause issues. All right, so you can have acute leukemia. That's going to be presence of undifferentiated or immature cells. And then you can have chronic leukemia. And this is the predominant cell that is cancerous is going to be a mature cell, but doesn't function normally. The outcomes are different based on which type of leukemia you have. Different treatments are going to be available based on what type of leukemia you have. You don't need to know that, but you do want to know that acute leukemia is undifferentiated or immature cells. Chronic leukemia is mature. And you can kind of connect the chronic and the mature. Chronic is long-term. Mature is older. All right, I see the connection between those two. Hopefully you can as well. Now, in Chapter 2, we looked at genetics and some of the chromosomal abnormalities. And this is not anything that you need to know, but it's just kind of interesting. Here is a very real and problematic example of a translocation, and it's called the Philadelphia translocation. And what you have is, this is the normal situation. You have the ABL gene and the BCR gene that are separated. All right, chromosome 9 here, chromosome 22 here. But with the Philadelphia translocation, you have the swap of the bottom part of 22, the bottom part of 9. And this is what you end up with. And these two genes being together, the ABL and the BCR gene together, that is thought to cause those leukocytes to become cancerous and go off the grid, so to speak. And 95% of CML leukemias and ALL or AL leukemias, 30% here, actually can have this Philadelphia chromosome. So it's just pulling information back from chapter 2. Right, myeloma is a cancer of plasma cells. A person will have excessive numbers of active plasma cells in their blood. The real problem is that the active plasma cells will produce and secrete high numbers of antibody, and that will then simply circulate in the blood. Under normal circumstances, circulating antibodies are a good thing because they help thwart many different kinds of infections and illnesses. But with myeloma, the blood gets has a high amount of antibody, and that increases the protein level and causes the blood to become viscous. You can use an example of traffic on a freeway. At 6 a.m. there are not many cars, so you can travel the speed limit, or dare I say, faster than the speed limit. This would be the situation for a normal person's antibody levels, but with myeloma, now you're looking at rush hour traffic when the situation gets bad. All right, so there's proliferation of plasma cells, and if it is multiple myeloma, you can have tumors that develop, all right, solitary or multifocal tumors. So multiple myeloma causes increased osteoclastic destruction. Clinical manifestations, you have cortical or medullary bone loss that develops into skeletal pain. You have recurring infections due to loss of the humoral immune response because your normal plasma cells are not functioning properly. You have the leukemic or the cancerous plasma cells that are pumping out high amounts of antibody, but it's not antibody that you need. And so then the proper functioning plasma cells do not have the ability to function properly. All right, lymphadenopathy. Enlarged lymph nodes that become palpable and tender, very painful. So there can be local lymphadenopathy, drainage of an inflammatory lesion located near an enlarged node. Then there can be general lymphadenopathy. This is going to occur in the presence of malignant or non-malignant disease. And in this gentleman here, you can see huge lymph nodes that are swollen. All right, all of these large areas, these masses are lymph nodes in the neck, under the armpits, in the groin, and this is going to be very painful. All right, if you think about if you've had mono and you have the increased lymph nodes, the cervical lymph nodes, right, even that hurts. But now think about it where you have the swollen lymph nodes in the major joints, and just simple movement can be quite painful. All right, the malignant lymphomas and the malignant lymphomas, transformation of a lymphocyte and the proliferation of those lymphocytes. Two major categories, Hodgkin's lymphoma and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So read about these in your textbook. There's a handout that is posted, and it has the cause, or what you want to know is the cause, the nodes involved, the extranodal involvement if it is or isn't, and then signs and symptoms. All right, last cancer, this is Burkitt's lymphoma, and it's the most common type of non-Hodgkin lymphoma in children. And it's called Burkitt lymphoma because Burkitt was the gentleman who discovered it. And what it is it's a fast-growing tumor of the jaw and facial bones. And again, this is caused or thought to be caused by Epstein-Barr virus.